In this video, we are going to discuss 10 things you don't need to believe in when reading the Bible on this episode of Ancient Egypt and the Bible. The idea for this video was suggested to us by a skeptic that frequently comments on the channel. Now, he was probably trying to be tongue-in-cheek with his suggestion, but I thought this was a great idea. There are a lot of accretions that accompany the Bible. An accretion is a belief that develops over time and becomes associated with the Bible or theology that finds its origin in other places, such as common beliefs of a particular time and place. For example, those beliefs found in the Middle Ages. And those accretions get carried along as common knowledge as readers approach the Bible. So, what we're going to do is discuss 10 things that you don't need to believe, read the Bible, and get something out of reading it. Just keep in mind that this is not an exhaustive list. There could be many more than 10 beliefs you don't need to believe in before approaching the Bible. But starting with 10 is a good round number, and that will provide us with an ample start for talking about this subject. So, let's start our list with number 1. Creationism, or any concordant view of origins. The Bible posits that God created the earth as a foundational assertion. Therefore, you don't need to believe any concordant view to read the Bible. Concordant views include young earth creationism, progressive creationism, old earth creationism, and even theistic evolution. Concordant theories are attempts to compatibilize scientific thinking with the Bible. Now, while many people think of young earth creationism as non-scientific, the truth is that young earth creationist groups like Answers in Genesis, Creation Ministries International, and the Institute for Creation Research assert that young earth creationism is consistent with good use of science. However, the writers of the Bible had no knowledge of science. They weren't thinking in scientific terms. They were writing about religion and ritual. Concordant theories superimpose science in an anachronistic way over the biblical text, and this creates interpretive distortions. Number 2, there's only one way to interpret the text. This is a favorite among fundamentalists, but you don't need to believe it. Taking that approach flattens the text in a way that distorts natural language. There are many ways and different levels from which to approach the biblical texts. Fundamentalists are famous for their mono-interpretive hermeneutic that says the only way to read the Bible is through a wooden literal lens. Oddly enough, many skeptics hold on to this while hating on fundamentalism, by saying that mono-interpretive readings are the original and best way to read the Bible, because it provides an easy target for criticism. However, historically, these readings are relatively recent and localized to the Americas. Following up on this idea, another thing that's often asserted to be read literally, but you don't have to read it literally, is numbers. Just because it is a number doesn't mean it has to be read literally. Associates for Biblical Research thinks all numbers have to be read literally, but there's no warrant for that. 7, 12, 40, 1000, and their multiples are infamous for having idiomatic significance. This idea that numbers necessitate a literal reading is an ad hoc exception to the principles of regular biblical hermeneutics, and you don't need to believe that all numbers need to be read literally. Number 3, hyperbole as literal. The Bible is full of literary devices. One of the most common is hyperbole. Hyperbole is when something is exaggerated in literature for effect. When a football team wins a game, a player may say, quote, "We slaughtered them all," end quote. Did that football player really just kill every person on the opposing team? Would you seriously believe that in a literal sense? Perhaps you are that naive, but I doubt it. In the same way, the Bible also uses hyperbole and uses it a lot. Deuteronomy 7:2 states, quote, "The Lord your God shall deliver them before you, and you shall defeat them, then you shall utterly destroy them," end quote. Then, immediately after, in verse 3, the text says, quote, "Furthermore, you shall not intermarry with them," end quote. If you read verse 2 literally, then you're forced to enter into some sort of weird corpse bride situation in verse 3. Ew. Ew. But the fact is that verse 2 is a hyperbole commonly found in war rhetoric. It's not intended to be interpreted in an absolute sense. Similarly, 1 Chronicles 14:17 states, quote, "Then the fame of David went out into all the lands, and the Lord brought the fear of him on all the nations," end quote. Was Japan afraid of David? How about Bronze Age Britain? Were they afraid too? Of course not. This is hyperbole. It's not meant to be interpreted literally. The original reader didn't necessarily read this literally, and neither should you. Number 4, a global flood. The flood in Genesis is a hotly debated subject. Some people believe it is a global flood. Some believe it is a local flood based upon there being hyperbolic language in the text. The question is actually irrelevant, since Noah's Ark is really the presentation of a sacralizing converter that is used to sanctify Noah's posterity and the animals for sacred use in a ritually cleansed world. So whether the world has been immersed or sprinkled is beside the point. As such, you don't need to believe that the flood was global, local, or anything else, because it's irrelevant to the central point of the passage. Number 5, de novo thinking. De novo thinking is the idea that everything in the Bible originated direct from the mind of God at the time he gave it directly to the prophets. It is the idea that all the laws in the Pentateuch, all the ritual trappings, and all the cultural customs come direct from God without any influence from surrounding nations. This idea is that everything in the Bible is a de novo special invention from God, and it is an attempt to hype up the specialness of the Bible. Now, isn't the Bible special enough without needing the extra hype? A mature understanding of inspiration takes into account God's direction and the culture of the biblical writer, whereas de novo thinking sees the messenger as irrelevant and counterfeits God's providence with special revelation. However, the Bible never makes the claim that everything in the Bible is de novo from God, and the evidence overwhelmingly shows that the Israelites borrowed a lot of cultural trappings from the surrounding nations. Number 6, every miracle is a first-order miracle. This is the idea that every miracle mentioned in the Bible requires that God violates a law of nature. This idea comes out of Hume's definition of miracles and has been picked up by a lot of Bible readers. However, the Bible doesn't make this a requirement for an event to be orchestrated by God. Many events in the Bible are natural or hypernatural events that are miracles of timing, not violations of laws of nature. This applies, for example, to most of the events that occurred during the Exodus. These are hypernatural events where the miracle is in its perfect timing. So, you don't have to believe every miracle is a first-order miracle. Number 7, soteriology. You don't need to believe in any particular view of soteriology. Such views include Calvinism, Arminianism, Molinism, Provisionism, and many of these views are denomination specific, but none of them are required to read or understand the Bible. They are theological reconstructions that are secondary issues. They're not scripture itself. For many people, these views present a roadblock for reading the Bible on its own terms. But the fact is, you don't need to believe in any soteriological view to read the Bible. Number 8, biblical chronology. Reconstructing a chronology using the Bible is problematic. The use of honorific transposition, parallel accounts, and 40 years as an indeterminate span of time, when lengths of time were unknown, makes the prospect of creating an authoritative biblical chronology virtually impossible. So, if anyone says you need to believe their biblical chronology, you don't have to buy it. Number 9, God only interacts with his chosen people. The idea that God only communicated with Israelites is not so biblical. God talked to Abimelech, king of Gerar, Genesis 20, verses 2 to 3. He talked to Hagar, the Egyptian. He talked to Balaam, a Moabite prophet. God revealed himself to representatives of many nations, but we get our surest revelations through the scriptures. So you don't have to believe that God only talks to Israelites. Read the Bible. And finally, number 10, a pre-tribulational rapture or any other view of eschatology. There are some Christian schools and denominations out there that claim you have to believe in a pre-tribulational rapture to be saved or to be an Orthodox Christian. That's simply nonsense. You don't have to believe in any view of eschatology at all. The Bible makes no unambiguous claims towards eschatology. And if the Bible is not clear about this, believing in a particular view of eschatology is not mandatory for reading the Bible. In conclusion, there are a lot of accretions that men have added to the faith that are simply not necessary. Some of these are denominational distinctives. Others are just traditions that have hung on like barnacles needing a good scraping. So if any of these beliefs are holding you back from reading the Bible, rest assured, they're not necessary for a profitable read of Scripture. So anyway, we hope you found that interesting and you learned something. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Ancient Egypt and the Bible.